The New York Mets blew out the Phillies on Monday night, and in doing so, they sent a clear message. We're still here.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've covered the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Well, the New York Mets had a huge victory on Monday night as they blow out the Phillies, and it's crazy because narratives can change in a baseball season so quickly. And I can't say right now, today, everything's fixed. But what I will say is if everything is going to get fixed, this could be the springboard for the New York Mets. And again, narratives change so rapidly because through the first 3 innings of the Mets game against the Phillies on Monday, I was thinking about what I was going to talk about on the show, and I thought it was going to be a podcast about how Kodai Senga didn't look good on regular rest, and the Mets got blanked by Christopher Sanchez, who going into this start was probably the runner-up for the NL Cy Young, and maybe he still is, but the Mets bats just delivered. They showed up in a big way. We'll talk about it all. Mark Vientos, the catalyst, 2 of the biggest at-bats of the game. No, I'd say the 2 biggest at-bats of the game. And this team just put that doubt in every single Phillies fan that's driving to work this morning. They got doubt right now if the Phillies can hold on to this division. They have just as much angst as any Mets fan did driving to work on Monday after the Mets couldn't beat the Braves or after any of the tough losses the Mets have had over the last couple of weeks. And there's doubt in every single one of those players' minds right now, the coaches for the Phillies, because this is a team that has had their number. After every single player and coach, well, I mean, all I saw was the players and the manager, but after the game, you saw the pressers for the Phillies. They were all asked the same question. Is this ballpark in your guys' head? Are you guys struggling to play here because they've lost 9 of their last 10 games at Citi Field? And all of them had the same answer. No, because what are they going to admit to it? Say, yeah, we're bad in this ballpark. This team's in our head. You're not going to say it. But if you read their faces, you wonder. It was a huge win for the Mets to grab some momentum, and we'll see where it takes them. Because a bad start by Sean Manaea and a bad one by Nolan McLean, it could erase everything that was gained from this victory. But this is a big one for the Mets. And I do have to say, while Kodai Senga was not great, before we get into the offense, we have to acknowledge that he did not have his best stuff. He's still searching for it. And yet he fought in every single inning. First inning, Trey Turner drives one into left center field. Tyrone Taylor, trying to be a hero to make a diving catch, isn't able to come up with it. Wasn't even that close. Ends up being a triple. If he just cuts it off, maybe it's a hustle double. Maybe it's just a single. Instead, he's standing on third base. A ground out brings him in. 2 batters in, Kodai Senga has already given up a run. Now, he gets through that first inning unscathed beyond that run. Second inning, he works around a walk and a single. Third inning, he picks up a couple of strikeouts that sandwich another walk and a single. And then he's got to face Alec Bohm with 2 on, 2 in, both actually in scoring position, 2 outs. Gives up a base hit that scores 2. So now it's 3-0. Then he gives up a double. Again, 2 runners in scoring position, able to strand them, get out of that inning. Fourth inning, gives up a leadoff single, another walk, but he's able to go through the top of the Phillies lineup and keep them off the board. That was Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber, got both of them to fly out. And then he struck out Bryce Harper on a fastball that was right down the middle. Definitely one that Harper is going to wish he had back. But Senga was able to survive. He was sitting at 85 pitches through 4 innings. But again, he kept them in the game. And in the bottom of the 4th inning, the Mets started going. First, you had Juan Soto with the leadoff single, but he was erased right away as Starling Marte hit into a double play. But Pete Alonso got a 2-out hit, advanced to second on a balk, advanced to third on a wild pitch. Mark Vientos was again the catalyst for this. He rips a hard ground ball down the third base line that gets into the outfield off the glove of Alec Boehm. Alonso easily scores. Vientos ends up on second. Vientos would score on an RBI single from Brandon Nimmo. I think the Mets caught a little bit of a break there because Bryce Harper cuts off the throw coming home. I don't know if the throw would have gotten there, but if it would have gotten there, it might have gotten Vientos because he's one of the slowest runners in Major League Baseball. But Harper cut it off and then turned around and washed as Vientos still wasn't at the plate and still had to take his final few steps into a needless dive to score that run. But two big hits there by Vientos and Nimmo. Then Tyrone Taylor draws a walk to set up Jeff McNeil. McNeil, first pitch hunting, gets a slider off the plate, does Jeff McNeil things, reaches out, able to hit a ground ball and find a hole in the infield. And the Mets were able to tie up the game just like that. 3 huge hits, 3 big runs, 3-3 ball game, and everything starts anew. Kodai Senga does go out there for the 5th inning, faces JT Realmuto, has a tough at-bat, 8-pitch battle, ends up in a full count, and he gets hit by a pitch. And that is the end of the day for Senga. Jose Castillo comes into the game. We're going to talk about how he got on the roster in the final segment. A lot of injury news that we'll get into to close out the show. But Castillo comes on, and right after Ron Darling summons him by saying, Castillo's good at getting the ball on the ground, getting double plays. Boom, double play ball. And the Mets are almost out of the inning. Alec Boehm then complains about the mic that has been there forever in center field, that based on how it was turned, it reflected, and that caused a problem in his sight line. And that's why he hit into a double play ball, which I think really was a brutal thing for the Phillies because Kodai Senga was out of the game. All right? You had your ace on the mound. Christopher Sanchez was not out of the game. And you made him sit through a, whatever it was, 15-minute delay, however long it was. Not to mention you had the long at-bat by JT Realmuto, the pitching change. It might have been a half an hour before Sanchez gets back on the mound, and the Mets took advantage in the bottom of the 5th. Vientos comes up with 2 runners on. Soto and Marte had each drawn walks. Again, 2 outs. He delivers, this time a double down the right field line. And that gives the Mets a 4-3 lead. He was fired up, and rightfully so. That's all the Mets got in that inning. So Tyler Rogers comes on, trying to hold a 1-run lead in the 6th. He does that with a 1-2-3 frame. Bottom of the 6th inning, Mets really started to cook. And again, with bottom of the lineup that was doing it, Tyrone Taylor with a double. All of a sudden, TT is on fire. Luis Torrens doubled as well to score Taylor. Starling Marte would later have an RBI single to drive in Torrens. And the Mets were able to get some insurance runs. Brooks Raley comes on, top of the 7th, faces the top of the Phillies lineup, sets them down in order, striking out Bryce Harper to cap off the inning. Bottom of the 7th, Mark Vientos gets hit by a pitch. Brandon Nimmo draws a walk. Tyrone Taylor gets another hit, a single that loads the bases. Jeff McNeil hits a sacrifice fly, and then Luis Torrens breaks the game open, hits his 3rd homer of the season, a 3-run shot that puts the Mets up 10-3. And then they would tack on 3 more runs in the 8th inning with Tyrone Taylor, Jeff McNeil, and Torrens all getting RBI singles. Ryan Helsley pitched the 8th, 1-2-3 inning, couple of well-struck fly balls, and then a strikeout of Brendan Marsh. Struck him out looking on a 102-mile-per-hour fastball. We'll see if he gets some confidence off of this appearance. And Stanek was the one who would get the final 3 outs of the game. But the offense, obviously the story for the Mets, just an insane day for the bottom of the lineup. You had Jeff McNeil, who was batting 8th, goes 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs. Before him in the lineup was Tyrone Taylor, who went 3 for 4 with 3 runs scored, a walk, and an RBI. Torrens, 3 for 5, matched a career high with 5 RBIs. As a team, the Mets went 11 for 19 with runners in scoring position in this game. And again, a lot of it came off Christopher Sanchez. 6 runs, 5 of them earned off of Sanchez, who had not come out of the game without completing 6 innings since the end of May. It was like 15 consecutive starts where he had gone at least 6, and he had not given up 5 earned runs all season. But the Mets did that to him. Just a offensive onslaught. And I talked about it on the series preview show yesterday. Not the one that I did. I guess we might have touched on it a bit, the show I did with Connor Thomas of Locked On Phillies, but the show that went up in the morning where I was talking about this series and just what it would mean for the Mets. And I was talking about this lineup, and I said on paper, you compare the Mets to the Phillies, and the Mets are a much better offensive team. They haven't showed it all year, but they are a better offensive team. And I think they're a better team on paper if they can figure out some semblance of a quality starting rotation over this final month. So what we're going to talk about in the final segment is this offense. I want to spend some time on Mark Vientos, who continues to shine once again, and how the Mets can maybe take this momentum and really stick it to the Phillies this week. So we're going to go through all that here coming up in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Today, August 26th, is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP or eyeing that long shot division winner, or if you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week one kicks off, this is your moment. I know I'm taking Jaden Daniels in the MVP race. I like the Bills to win the Super Bowl, but we'll see what you like. You can make your picks. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, run your game. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. I talked about it again on yesterday's show, how the Mets lineup is really just so much more potent on paper than what the Phillies got. And the one of the main parts of my argument was, look at the home run hitters that the Phillies have. They got Kyle Schwarber, who's got whatever it is, 45 bombs, and Bryce Harper just over 20. That's it. Those are the only two guys that have over 20 home runs. The Mets have Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo. All of them are over 20. Soto's over 30, and Alonso, I think he's getting real close. What is he? He might be at 29, but regardless, four guys already clear of 20 who all conceivably could get to 30. I don't think Nimmo, but the other three, good shot at it. You got Brett Beatty sitting at 15 homers. Mark Vientos is at 12, but the guy that we're watching right now is the Vientos that could hit 30 in a season. And you even have Cedric Mullins, who will probably get to 20 this year. So you're talking about a line that has so much offensive firepower. We're going to talk about Francisco Alvarez in the next segment. He might be back relatively soon. And you have Starling Marte, who just continues to rake. So this team is sitting right now with a lineup where the one hole in their lineup on a given day is Luis Torrens if Alvarez is not healthy, which he's not right now, and Torrens just drove in 5. Maybe it's Tyrone Taylor if he gets a given start. He just had a huge game. Now, can you count on those guys to always be this offensively? Of course not. This is probably, I can actually nearly guarantee that this is the only time you're going to get games this good on the same night from Tyrone Taylor and Luis Torrens. And it came at the perfect time. But this lineup is dangerous. And all year, the Mets have been missing Mark Vientos. Missing the guy that was arguably their best hitter in the playoffs last year. It was either him or Pete Alonso. But those two guys were awesome all playoffs long. Remember, Mark Vientos is the guy that had clutch hit after clutch hit against the Phillies in that NLDS. The one that took it personal when they intentionally walked Francisco Lindor in Game 2 of the NLCS to get to Vientos, and he responded with the grand slam. The guy that tied the Mets franchise record for RBIs in a single postseason. Mark Vientos has a ability to rise to the moment. We saw it last year. And all season long throughout his struggles, times where we might have been looking at Ronnie Mauricio as the answer at third base or Brett Beatty as the answer at third base. I was always pretty consistent on this show about Mark Vientos. Had he earned the playing time? Not necessarily. But did he have the highest ceiling offensively of that group? Absolutely. And we're starting to see it in the way Beatty's swinging it. You're creating a problem right now. And that problem is too many good bats for 9 spots in a lineup. And that is a great problem to have, especially as you get to September. because you are looking at a lineup that 1 through 9 is really deep. Look at the Phillies lineup. How good do you feel when Alec Boehm steps in the box? I'm swinging it good right now. But if you're a Phillies fan, are you feeling great when Boehm steps in come October? Are you feeling good about Brandon Marsh, Max Kepler, Harrison Bader, Bryson Stott? I mean, that lineup falls off a cliff after their top 3, it feels like at times. I know Real Muto and Boehm have been swinging better bats lately. But that team has 3 really good hitters, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, and Bryce Harper. And the rest, you have some guys that are a little bit meh, a little bit in the middle. The Mets have 4 guys atop their lineup, although they haven't been batting them consecutively lately because Nemo's been banged up and Starling Marte keeps raking. So now Marte is batting third. And if you would have told me that before the season, that Starling Marte would be batting third in an intense matchup against the Phillies at the end of August, I'd say crazy, but he's earned it. And you're looking at this lineup where it doesn't have any dip until you got to Tyrone Taylor tonight. And Tyrone Taylor delivered. And there's going to be games where instead of Tyrone Taylor, actually a lot more games where it's going to be Cedric Mullins batting 9th. When you get Alvey back, you can run a lineup that's Lindor, Soto, Beatty. See how you figure out to get Marte and Vientos in the same lineup. It's not going to be possible against right-handed arms, so you're going to have to pick one, probably Vientos because of the power upside. But against lefties, you got Marte at DH, Vientos at third, and it's fine if Brett Beatty doesn't start those games. As much as I think Beatty has earned an everyday role, if that's the way that you could put the best 9 together against lefties, that's what you got to do. And this team that couldn't hit lefties, they hang a bunch of runs on Joey Wentz, and now they hang a bunch of runs on Christopher Sanchez. They can do it again maybe tonight against Jesus Luzardo, and that could be an issue that might go away. But Mark Vientos, to me, is still the guy that just unlocks everything. Because I think he's the one hitter in this lineup that come October can rise to that same tier of the Mets' top 4 guys. Where he can be, in addition to your Fab 4 of Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo. It can be Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, Vientos. And even though Brett Beatty has been awesome lately, I don't know if he can quite get to that tier. I think Brett Beatty is perfect as a great defensive third baseman who seems to be, I've been saying it a lot lately, every at-bat Brett Beatty's sitting 3-2, and it's a good place to be because you're going to get some pitches to hit, and he's doing some damage. So it's not a knock on Beatty, but it's just a compliment to Vientos on the level that we've seen him get to. And you can't forget that that was last year. We're not even a full year removed from it. They talked about it on the broadcast. Vientos was telling Steve Gelbs that all year he was trying to cover everything. And he went into the offseason thinking, I'm going to be a silver slugger. I can win an MVP. He was fired up after that awesome postseason run. And he tried to do too much. Now it's just getting back to what worked for him. How many times do we hear that with hitters? Jeff McNeil, sort of the same deal over the last, since the second half of last year, just getting back to what worked for him. And for Vientos right now, it's just looking for his pitch and not trying to cover everything else. Looking for his pitch that he can do damage on. And he's doing it. You look at this lineup. Over the last 30 days, the New York Mets are second in Major League Baseball to the Yankees in home runs. They're third in OPS. They're third in runs scored. That's a month span here. Over the last couple of weeks, or the last 13 games, the Mets are hitting 316, 386, 573 as a team. That's a 959 OPS. That's an all-star, and that's the team's lineup over the past 2 weeks. That's the best in baseball when it comes to OPS. No team has scored more runs than the New York Mets in the past 2 weeks. There's other teams that have played more games. The Mets right now are showing the ability to be an offensive juggernaut, and that's what they got to be down the stretch. They got to lead with the bats. The pitching has to meet them halfway, but they have to lead with the bats. And if they do so, particularly in this series, and they're able to win the series, if not sweep the series, all of a sudden you're 4 games back in this division. And you still got 4 left to play against the Phillies in Citizens Bank in the middle of September. And if you sweep them, the mental edge will carry into that series. It's massive. But the Reds lost tonight as well, so you're 2.5 games up in the wild card, and that's the most important thing. Get in, and if this team keeps swinging the bats like this over the final 31 games, they should get in and get in pretty comfortably. And once you get to the playoffs, last couple of World Series champions, yes, they have had good pitching that has got them through the playoffs, but it's been the bats. It's been lineups that 1 through 9 are dangerous. We saw it with the Rangers 2023. We certainly saw it up close and personal with the Dodgers last year. The Mets have a lineup on paper that can beat any team. And now we're starting to see the real potential that is there. And hopefully they continue to meet that series after series after series. And if you just keep stacking series victories, you're going to be happy with where you're at when it's all said and done. But what I want to talk about in the final segment, a lot of injury updates to go through. So we're going to talk about that and sort of put a bow on this game and what to look for here over the next couple as the Mets still continue this series against the Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings in the iconic taste of a golf course favorite in a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game, whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra boost to power you through your day. 5 Hour Energy Transfusion will deliver that clubhouse flavor you love without leaving the green. Golf's all about having good times with good people and good flavors. And the grape, ginger, lime flavor, the 5 Hour Energy Transfusion shots will give you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without having to chase down that beverage cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5HEWIN. That's the number 5HEWIN.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways and the lineup graphics sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, the Mets got some really good news today. Francisco Alvarez is already taken BP. Carlos Mendoza talked about it with the media, said he was shocked when he got a video of Alvarez taking BP and taking full, aggressive, normal hacks, like high-intensity swings with that thumb that has the ligament tear in it. Seems like he's okay. Now, this is a pain tolerance thing. Worst case scenario, at some point, that ligament just snaps and he needs to get the surgery, but it's not going to worsen to the point that he can damage his hand more long-term. This is all a pain tolerance thing. If he can play through it, he's good to go. And so here he is beating the timeline. They were going to shut him down for at least 10 days. He's 8 days removed from the injury. He's already swinging a bat at full speed. Basically, he's going to take BP again on Tuesday. If all goes well, he could start a rehab assignment on Wednesday or Thursday. And he's only missed a little over a week. So, I mean, Alvarez could be back in short order. Francisco Alvarez could be your September call-up. He could come back next week and when the rosters expand. And the only reason why I think they might do that is because, for one, Luis Angel Acuna had a collision at first base last week. I don't believe he's gotten into a game again. I did check. He is still active on the Syracuse roster, so he's not on the IL there. But Acuna, I always thought would come up as the September call-up, give them a little more speed off the bench, give them that defensive replacement if they ever wanted to have one at second base, give you another shortstop on the roster. Obviously, Ron Mauricio right now is the backup shortstop, but Acuna clearly a better defender. So Acuna makes a lot of sense on this roster. We saw it last year. We saw it throughout this year. He is a very good bench piece, but maybe you want Acuna to get some more swings in Syracuse, and maybe you want to have 3 catchers just in case you want to DH Alvarez on occasion, which Mendoza did talk about. We still don't know how throwing the baseball is going to be for Alvy. That still could be an issue. They got to get him on a throwing program now too. But the bottom line is he is trending towards a return, and it could be a return in very short order. Now, another guy who's about to begin a rehab assignment on Wednesday is Jose Siri. For Siri, you're talking about someone who's been down for months. So that rehab assignment is going to take a lot longer. And now that the Mets have traded for Cedric Mullins, they really don't have a need for Jose Siri on their roster. It's an interesting situation because Siri is under team control for, I believe, 2 more years after this season. Tyrone Taylor, it's only 1 more year. So you can make an argument that it doesn't make any sense to cut Jose Siri if you don't have to, because you might want him to be your backup center fielder next year. You just don't know. So I think the Mets probably extend that rehab assignment for a pretty good amount of time. And once he proves ready, maybe he is the guy that comes up to be your pinch runner down the stretch. But I don't think Jose Siri is going to be making an impact on this team and making a playoff roster. I think that is unlikely, but at least he's going to get back on the field. And you never know. I mean, things can happen. You might need another center fielder, in which case he's good depth to still have. But again, I don't think they're going to cut Jose Siri when he's healthy and ready to come up, because I think they can just navigate the situation. If worst case scenario, you have to just keep Acuna in Syracuse throughout the rest of this year. He can develop there, and he's always on the 40-man roster if and when you ever need him, but you could just keep him down there at this point. So I think that's where the Mets are at with their roster, but obviously the biggest news of the day from the position player front is the fact that you could get Alvarez back soon, because even though Torrens had a huge game and has played pretty well in his absence, we know that Alvi has the ability to really raise the ceiling of this team, even playing through a thumb injury, and especially because the layoff hasn't been that long. I would just hope that he's able to pick up where he left off, or at least close to where he left off down the stretch. So good news there. Now the bad news, Garrett hit the IL with elbow inflammation. The ligament is fine. In Carlos Mendoza's words, the ligament is perfect, but there was inflammation, so he got a cortisone shot to let everything calm down. They're going to hopefully ramp him up in maybe 10 days, depending on how everything looks. And if everything looks good on MRI and he's feeling good and everything is all right, then they'll get him back throwing, and he should come back at some point in September. Right now, Jose Castillo, as I mentioned earlier, obviously, because he got in this game, he replaced him, so the Mets now have 3 lefties in their bullpen. And I want to issue a half apology to the Mets front office, because I was campaigning for a long time for Ryan Stanek to get DFA'd. And when Jose Castillo is on your roster, as well as Huascar Brazaban, you can make a case that it's a good thing you still have Ryan Stanek, even with his inconsistencies this year, because let's just say Garrett has a setback and he's not available. You're still going to be pretty happy to have Stanek at your disposal come October as a guy that could get hot at the right time and actually be an impact arm for you. So I'll admit that I was maybe a little bit wrong there, but it's a half apology, because I've been questioning why Garrett was an option for a few weeks now as he continued to struggle. We didn't know publicly that he was struggling to bounce back from appearances. Makes total sense. His worst month of the season by far, an ERA of 8, and he gave up runs in 4 of his last 5 appearances. It's a half apology because I don't understand why they let this go as long as they did when they were in a roster crunch. I mean, not that Paul Blackburn, we'd have to revisit all that, but you theoretically could have got Garrett's elbow checked out and had him on the IL and kept the depth arm for a little bit longer. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what's next here. But the Mets now are sitting in a situation where suddenly their bullpen's getting a little bit thin. Now, I think it's going to get filled out by starting pitching, because you can see Clay Holmes pitching out of the bullpen. You can see Tyler McGill pitching out of the bullpen. You can see one of the top prospects pitching out of the bullpen, whether that's Brandon Sproat or Nolan. Well, Nolan McClain's going to stand there. I'm always attaching those 2 names together because we've been talking about them together for so long. What I meant to say was Brandon Sproat or Jonah Tong. Those guys could pitch out of the pen down the stretch as well. So the Mets still have plenty of options. When it comes to this starting rotation, Carlos Mendoza hesitated to say they were going to stick with the 5-man. So it really does feel like this was all about this series, to have the 5-man rotation to get Nolan McClain into the series. And with that, I'm going to lay down my sword. I'm not going to argue anymore that the Mets made any mistakes with their rotation. I think this game could have gone drastically differently, and we would have still been having that conversation. But the bats helped save Kodai Senga. Kodai Senga fought through those 4 innings, and the bullpen was strong after him. And so that ultimately led the Mets to getting this victory in the series. And now Nolan McClain's going to have a chance to pitch in a rubber match at worst. And I love that for the Mets. And I think everything played out the way that they wanted to, and it did work out for the best. But I still do not think that Senga is going to stay on a 4 days rest schedule. They're going to put another start in this rotation later this week. I'm pretty sure of it, especially when Carlos Mendoza hesitated answering that question. Who will that starter be? Unlikely to be Tyler McGill. As Mendoza said, he's going to get at least one more rehab start before he comes back. That start's supposed to come on Thursday, which would give him an extra day's rest. And the goal is to get him up to 75 pitches. With that said, you always could alter that plan. If he has 75 pitches to give and he's looked great on rehab, Thursday would line up for him to make a start on extra rest and push back David Peterson, or actually Clay Holmes and David Peterson, to Friday and Saturday. Everybody gets extra rest. Kodai Senga goes on Sunday, and you can keep your top prospects in AAA if you want to. The other option, you call up either Brandon Sproat or Jonah Tong. I think based on when those guys pitched, I think it was Sproat on Sunday. Was it Sproat on Sunday and Tong on Saturday this past week? I think that's what the Mets did, if memory serves. So they would keep Holmes and Peterson on regular rest if they want to go to Jonah Tong on Saturday, or they could go to Brandon Sproat to make that start in front of Kodai Senga. So I still think there's a chance we see another top prospect make a start this week. And you could roll with that starting pitcher for a little bit. You could add Tyler McGill to the fold and take out Clay Holmes. You could have, if it is Brandon Sproat, maybe he makes a one spot start and then they shorten him up and have him pitch out of the big league bullpen, or they could have him make a spot start. He's on the 40-man roster before you get to September, so he's eligible for the playoffs. And then you send him to Syracuse, have McGill come up in his place, and then you try to teach him how to be a reliever over the final month. I think that's a distinct possibility for the Mets as well here. Maybe the most likely outcome, to be completely honest, because I think there's a pretty good chance that they are going to keep running Clay Holmes out there as a starting pitcher with some of the progression we've seen over his last few starts. So this team is getting, I think, a little more formidable when you consider McGill coming back, more and more of McLean being in the fold here, and hopefully that steady progression we've been waiting on from Minaya and Senga. Senga, I love the fight that he showed on the mound. I thought that was a good sign, but there's still something a little bit off. He said after the game that he just feels like he doesn't have the same power. I can't remember exactly how to phrase it. He phrased it in a really unique way, that there wasn't as much power behind his pitches or whatever. It was. I can't get the exact wording of it off the top of my head here, but go back and watch the interview, and he explains it, through the interpreter, how he just doesn't quite have the same zip, the same bite on his pitches, and that, in his words, was leading to some soft contact falling for hits instead of being foul balls, and then being able to put the ball in play instead of just fighting off pitches, and then he's able to put guys away, not getting the same chase. So we'll see. Senga physically feels fine, but he needs to find that power again, and hopefully he does, and maybe going on regular rest and changing up the schedule, but also getting over 90 pitches, got the 95 pitches, maybe that'll be something that'll help him out and get him right. It's going to be very interesting to see what Sean Manaea does tonight on regular rest. If he can put together a good start, that could be huge for this team. And one other thing to note here, the Phillies, or at least Phillies fans, as I learned on our Locked On crossover that I did with Connor Thomas, they got a real fear of Sean Manaea. And I wonder if that exists in that Phillies dugout because of what Manaea did to them last year. Maybe he can take the adrenaline from this interdivision matchup and rise to the moment. And if he does and delivers the Mets a really good start and Jesus Luzardo gets knocked around, all of a sudden this Mets team is going to be in a really good spot come Wednesday. But either way, they'll have a chance to win this series, and that's what made that victory on Monday so important for this team. I cannot wait to continue to watch and see where this story goes next, see where the Mets season ends up. It's been a wild year, but it could be one with a great finish still. There's still 31 games left to play. Mets 2.5 games up in the wild card, I'm counting my eggs before they hatch here. 6 games back in the NL East. We'll knock on some wood here. Sorry, everybody. But we'll see what happens here over the next couple of days. As always, thank you all for listening. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider and be part of our texting service, You can find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On MLB Game Night, the show that'll take you around all the action in Major League Baseball with insight from our local experts and league-wide experts that will take you through all the games. You can find Locked On MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel as well as the Locked On MLB podcast feed.